Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another monthly roundup. This is my December monthly roundup of all of the things that I have been doing in the month of December that's not in my garden or renovating my house. Although I guess there's been some side house projects. Um, Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today for this little video where I just sort of ramble at you for a bit about all of the other stuff that I'm up to. Um, People seem to be really enjoying this content. Thank you always to everybody who is returning to my videos. I always so appreciate you and the time that you spend with me and the time that you offer my channel. I love reading all of your comments, and it's just really wonderful to see. I hope you've all had a really wonderful Christmas, however that looks to you. In the UK, Christmas is a holiday time, so people are generally off work. I haven't had a lot of holiday this year. I've mostly been at work. I have some holiday coming up in a couple of weeks, which I'm looking forward to. So Christmas has been really quiet. I've already shared with you my solo Christmas vlog, so head on over to that video if you want to have a quick look at what that looks like. And in this video, I am going to be doing a quick review-ish of everything that I've been reading, watching, making, and anything else that I've been getting up to that I think is worthy of sharing with you. So let's get into it. The first thing that I'm going to share with you is all of the things that I've been watching in December. I have watched a lot of telly this month. I don't normally watch loads of telly. I'm one of those people where the TV is always on, but I'm not necessarily watching it. But I've actually watched a lot of shows this month. Um, I have limited subscriptions, I think. I don't know what's normal anymore, actually. I don't watch live TV. I don't have a TV aerial, so I can only watch things on demand or via the internet. I typically watch things on BBC iPlayer, ITV On Demand, which is ITVX, and the Disney Channel. I do also have Amazon Prime, but I don't watch things on it that much. So I tend to be across those four platforms. Um, on BBC iPlayer, in December, the first half of December, I watched two shows. The first show I watched was called Moonflower Murders, and I remember it came up in my iPlayer recommendations. I was like, what is this thing? And it kept trying to autoplay. So I eventually sat down and watched it. And it was a really sweet drama. It's like a 6 or 8 part drama of someone solving a mystery. And I remember watching it thinking, oh, this is quite good, but it makes absolutely no sense at all. Why is this person solving murders? They are a book editor living in Greece. And it turns out when I finished watching Moonflower Murders, this other recommendation popped up, which was Magpie Murders. And it turns out that Magpie Murders was series one, and Moonflower Murders is series two of the same show. So when I watched Magpie Murders, all of a sudden, why a book editor living in Greece was solving a murder made way more sense. So I do recommend both of these series. They are on iPlayer in the UK. They'll probably be available other places, maybe, hopefully. Magpie Murders and Moonflower Murders. Please don't make the same mistake that I did and watch them in the correct order, and it will make so much more sense. But yeah, they're a really nice sort of take on the parlor murder. So you sort of have to take it step by step down all these little narrow alleyways of solving the mystery of who was the murderer. It was a nice variation on that one, and I liked it a lot. So yeah, happy to recommend those two to you. Uh, Next up on Disney, I'm watching a couple of shows on Disney. There's a couple of shows that sort of I just go back to, but a new to me show that I watched was called Tracker, and it's a rubbish show. It's just completely nonsensical. It's about a guy who's It's based in the US, and when people go missing and place rewards for information of missing people, this is a guy that goes around and goes and finds them and collects the reward. Um, I swear that the first 10 episodes auto played on Disney one day, and I didn't watch a single one of them. Um, I probably paid attention to the first half of the first episode and then just ignored the rest. It's that kind of, every episode sort of follows the same pattern. It's slightly ridiculous, relatively entertaining, but when I actually sat down and started to pay attention to it, I did quite enjoy it. So and it's on a it turns up every week. So every week I've got a new one. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll sit down and watch that episode today, and I have started paying attention to it. Other things that I watch on Disney that is The Resident, and particularly for UK people or non-US people, people who live outside of a private healthcare system. If you want a horror story of what it would be like to live without the NHS, then I recommend watching The Resident. It's like, elements of it are like Grey's Anatomy, but it's nowhere near as bright and shiny and happy endings. There's a lot of gritty reality, and they kind of come good in the end, but some of the situations are horrifying for somebody who is used to free at the point of access healthcare. So yes, anybody might give that a go. There's 6 series, I think, and I periodically watch an episode. Some episodes are really difficult to watch. They're quite harrowing. So it's not a show that I enjoy to binge watch, but I do pick up an episode every now and again. Um, Something else that I watched on BBC, which is definitely available on other platforms, I've seen it pop up elsewhere, is Doctor Who. I have been behind in my Doctor Who watching. I have watched all of the updated Doctor Who episodes, but I didn't sit down and complete the series with the new Doctor, Nkuti Gatwa, who is just an amazing actor. If you've seen Sex Education on Netflix, but also they're everywhere. Um, and I'm really, really enjoying it. The stories are really good. I'm really happy that Stephen Moffat is back. Not Stephen Moffat, Russell T Davies is back in the writing helm. The quality of writing is so much improved on this Doctor Who, and I'm completely up to date. I've watched the whole of the series that was released earlier this year and the Christmas special, which was also very sweet. And then finally, on Christmas Day, I sat down and watched a movie. This is the first time I've sat down and watched a film in a really long time. Um, I still had to break it up into bite-sized chunks, I can't lie. I did not watch it end to end without stopping. I had to take regular breaks. But I watched Dune 2. I watched Dune last year, I think. And then I've just gotten around to watching Dune 2. I haven't ever read Dune. It's one of those books that I sort of look at every now and again. I think I really should read it, but feels like a lot of hard work. So I haven't actually read it, but I've probably seen every adaptation that there is. I feel like I know the stories very well. Um, and I quite liked this adaptation, but at the same time, it was a pretty, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what the right word for it is. I don't think it would ever have been a film that would have done really well if they tried to turn it into a really action packed, Fast and the Furious style um, movie. But at the same time, it was really slow in places, and there was a lot of like weird details. Um, and you sometimes just think, are you just filling it in to justify the fact that you've made this two feature length films? Perhaps it could have actually been one if you just got the pace on a little bit. So I'm a bit skeptical. There's talk of a third one as well, which would be into some of the later books in the Dune series. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I was glad to have watched it, and I'm still not committing to reading the book anytime soon. I think that brings us into what I've been reading and listening to. So I have read I've read two complete books this month. I finished a book that's been hanging around for a bit, and I finished a really long audiobook. So I'm claiming four finished books this month. The first one is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a book I got from the library, so I don't have it with me. I will try and insert a picture, but I'm quite bad at doing that, so I can't promise. Um, but if it's useful, actually, just a side comment, if it's useful, I can put links to these things down below. I haven't done in either of this, I hadn't planned to, and I didn't in my previous video because I'm not quite sure what links will work universally. I don't just want to chuck Amazon links into everything. So yeah, so if anybody has any thoughts or ideas of how I might share links to any of the things I'm talking about in this video, please pop them down below. That would be great. But The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, I was really disappointed by this book. It's one of those books that's doing the rounds on Bookstagram, BookTok, probably BookTube, but I don't pay that much attention to it. It's been out for a couple of years. It is a fantasy book set in a world that is situated probably um, in it's somewhere in Asia. There's a lot of elements that sort of are I recognize as being associated with Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Korea, those kinds of areas. But it's a fantasy version of that, and it's very Americanized on top as well. So it's kind of a bit mixed up. Um, it broadly follows a girl from a obscure background, identified for great things, goes to the special academy for learning greatness, and then their potential is unlocked, and they go on to do great things. But it's really weirdly constructed in that there's a lot of just doesn't quite hit the mark for me, actually, is what I'm trying to say. The characters are quite two-dimensional. Things happen that don't make sense. The writing is really inconsistent. For example, there's a point when our hero, I can't remember any of the names of these people, I'm really sorry, but our heroine or our protagonist that we're following in the book takes a break, they have holiday, they go and spend it with a friend, and you get minute detail of all of the things that they're going off and doing on this holiday over 3 or 4 days. It's a lengthy description, and yet later on, when our protagonist is sort of dropped into their first military unit, and they are in on the front lines in the middle of battle, and they seem to be there for about 6 months and never speak to any of their fellow soldiers. They don't know anything about the unit. They don't know anything about why they're there. Um, they just sort of it's just like almost like they're running out of time in the story to get to the end, which is where they're trying to go, and so all of the meaningful information that sort of makes you care about these people is just abandoned. So yeah, so I found there to be some really odd choices in the narrative, lots of things that didn't make sense, lots of things that were just contrived to get to the next place in the story. um yeah, it just really disappointed me compared to the hype. There's also it really disappointed me because there's a potentially really good story in there if the author can just get their act together and make it actually make sense and be enjoyable. So that was, I think I gave that 3 stars on Goodreads. Yes, I'll double check that. Um, the second book that I wanted to talk about was a Kindle book. This is a book that I finished. I've been reading it for months. It's the Kindle book that I normally have on my phone. So if I'm stuck in a queue or waiting at a train station or something like that, then I will just read a couple of pages. It was called The Shadow Cartel. I didn't even note the name of the author, but I will try and remember to put that in the notes. Um, and I feel like I've read this book so you don't have to. It was terrible. Unless you really like the kind of Jack Reacher um, situation unfolding broadly pop based stories. Um, and I think you'd have to really like them, because I don't think this is a good example of one of those books at all. Then there's absolutely no reason for anybody to read this book. And I am not going to say any more about it. That was the Shadow Cartel, which I read on Kindle. My audiobook for that I finished. I started this in possibly October. It's a Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. This is 27 hours and 19 minutes long. It's not a short book, and it's very, very detailed. It's a strange book. I think I rated it 4 stars. On Audible, the performance is amazing. It's exactly the right voice actor for the story. I am not a John Irving. I'm not experienced at reading their work. John Irving also wrote A Cider House Rules and a couple of other things that you will have heard of. They're quite, I'd call them sort of intellectual, highbrow literature. A Prayer for Owen Meany broadly follows the story. It's a memoir of a person called Johnny, Johnny Wheelwright, and he is reflecting on his life, telling us the story of his life with his best friend Owen Meany. It is very convoluted. You sort of start at a point, he's telling you about something, and then he goes all the way around the houses, all around the whole time zone. So he's going back 50 years of his life, but he's sort of telling you 50 years of his life about this point. So things that happened later, things that happened with Owen, things that happened as a child, as a teenager, at university, as an adult, things that are happening today, and then eventually gets back to this point in history where he was telling you about a thing he was doing with Owen Meany. And the entire book does this. It just sort of loops along, loops back. Um, I don't think I could have read this book. I do have a copy of it. A friend of mine lent it to me. It's a fat book, about that fat. I don't. I just don't think I could have read it. All of this sort of detail and meandering thought processes just wouldn't have worked for the way that I read. But listening to it as an audiobook, I really enjoyed it. It's taken me a long time because you really need to listen to it. There's a lot of detail, and because of the meandering, you can miss things really easily. The other thing that I found strange about it is that despite having really enjoyed it, I did not like any of the characters in it, with a couple of exceptions. But the characters are really two-dimensional. Loads of things happen, but you don't know anything. There's no motivation. You don't understand how anybody functions. You don't sort of feel for anyone. The actual character of Owen Meany I found to be intensely dislikable. Intensely dislikable. Kind of redeemed himself a little bit towards the end. Um, but for the most part, he was the most obnoxious child. If I had to grow up with this person or be an adult in this person's company, it would have just been such hard work. Very precocious child, I think is the right word. But somehow, despite not really gelling with the style, not liking any of the characters, um, I really enjoyed listening to this book. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I can't describe what it was that actually made it really good, other than the voice actor and the atmosphere that sort of develops around it. Yeah, so that's A Prayer for Owen Meany on Audible if you want to give that a try. My final book that I want to talk about was another library book, so I don't have a copy of it, although I'm really tempted to go out and buy one, because I loved this book so much. And I don't buy books. I don't like to particularly own books. It's not something that I do. But it's a book called The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Again, it's a book that's been out for a little while. I happened upon it on Bookstagram, and managed to get a copy out of my local library. It is just the most beautiful book. I have been waxing lyrical to everyone about how good this book is since I finished reading it. It is so warm and so comforting and so beautiful is like the only word that I can think of. It's set in I don't know that I guess it probably counts as fantasy because it's situated in a not quite real world. The world itself is sort of reminiscent of elements that you've seen in other books, sort of 1984, a little bit of neuromancer, but not in the obvious way that you would think of that from either of those two titles actually. So they're really bad examples. But there's elements of it that sort of make you think it's in some kind of sort of I don't know, Soviet era Russia or communist China or something along those lines. Apart from it's very much definitely in North America, probably specifically the US. Um, but you don't really know anything about the world. You just sort of, it's very claustrophobic to our protagonists' sort of first person experience um, of going off and doing their doing their job. The other sort of fantastical element is that that job is the monitoring of magical children. So children who demonstrate or have the potential for magical abilities have been removed from their families and put into foster care, effectively group home situations. And our protagonist has to go and inspect, and they're sent on a very mystery long-term inspection of a children's home. They have to leave their house for a month and go and reside at the children's home to observe. There are some very extreme examples of children with magical abilities at this location, and the ministry want to make sure that everything's okay. Um, but everything else about it just has, if you're sort of into Studio Ghibli movies, it's just got that My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away kind of atmosphere to it, where everything is just really gentle and really sort of otherworldly, and you're sort of living, even inside the book, they're living in a fantasy. Um, and it's really obvious from very early in the book where the story is going. But that actually almost made it worse for me because I just spent the entire time I was reading it just like holding my breath, going, nothing can make this go wrong. They have to have a happy ending. Everything has to go right. Like I'd be dead. Like my heart is like so full in my chest. It's just going to explode if anything goes wrong with the way that I think this story is going to go. It was a very intense emotional experience. But that was just how much I did. Within about 2 pages, just fell completely and deeply in love with everybody in the book. All of the characters, apart from the obvious, were just so gorgeous. There is a second one. I will be reading it, but I need to give myself a bit. Otherwise, I don't know if there would be anything. I don't think literature would have anything to offer me if I complete this series. If I'm quite honest with you, I probably will never want to read another book again because no book could ever be as good as this. Um, so deeply do I love this book that not only have I made it the best book I've read in 2024, I actually think it's the best book I've read in the last decade. So high praise indeed, I understand. But if there's only one of my recommendations ever in the whole history of my channel that you want to go and read, it would be The House of the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. All right, so next up in my wrap up of monthly things, I have what I have been making. And initially, this was entirely just recipes of things, of food. It's December. There's been a lot of opportunity for feasting. December seems to be the month of seem to have dedicated it to soups. I've made a lot of different soups this month, which I love. But my favourite, I made a pea and ham soup. I can't share a recipe with you. I just kind of made it up. I used dry marifat peas and some leftover ham out of the freezer and vegetable stock, and that was it. And it turned out to be completely delicious. I've also made quite a lot of bread and butter pudding. Do people outside of the UK eat bread and butter pudding? I have no idea. Um, it's literally bread, butter, custard, or an English custard, and baked in the oven. You can add fruit, you can add dry fruit, you can add chocolate. Chocolate's nice. Um, so yeah, you can fancy it up, but at the core it is bread, butter, and custard, and it's a really really good way to use up leftover bits of bread and leftover like an excess of milk. So I make it quite a lot because I tend to have lots of those. Um, Non-traditionally, I eat it for breakfast. Don't it's intentionally it's supposed to be a dessert, but I tend to eat it for breakfast. I also eat apple crumble and rice pudding for breakfast. I don't tend to have them for desserts. So possibly tells you a bit too much about me. Um, but the particular thing about December is that I have made bread and butter pudding using panettone because the supermarkets have been full of it for Christmas. Panettone is an Italian. It's a very soft. It's not brioche, but it's kind of brioche texture with fruits and things. Very, very delicious sweet bread. Um, and yeah, so I've been using it to make bread and butter pudding, which I had this morning for my breakfast. And my other thing that I made, which I haven't had for years and forgot, I knew I liked it, but I'd forgotten how much I liked it, and that was a celeriac remoulade, which is sort of like coleslaw, but with celeriac. I like to spiralize the celeriac for this, and remoulade is a French sauce. It's a mayonnaise-based sauce with whole grain mustard, um, lemon juice, salt, pepper, that kind of thing. And you sort of make, hence why it's sort of like a coleslaw. So you have the raw celeriac, the remoulade sauce. I've had to go on quite a Google adventure to find out if anything else ever gets turned into remoulade, as in, I only ever hear of the dish celeriac remoulade. Um, Never heard of anything else being used for it, but apparently it's a quite flexible condiment used in France for fish and meats and salads and in sandwiches and things like that. So maybe I'll make it and use it for something else. But celeriac remoulade with smoked salmon for breakfast has also been a very, very good. I have additionally made some progress on some of my knitting. I haven't got it. Let me go get that. I think I'm back. Okay, so this is my rainbow shawl that I shared with you last time. I think I'm in the middle of a row, so this is going to be quite difficult to show. But I have made progress. I didn't do anything sensible, like put a stitch marker to tell me how much progress I've made since I last shared it with you. But I know I've changed colour. I was previously in this bright pink, and now I'm sort of in this more mauvey colour. And I've only got, this is starting to feel like I'm coming towards the end. Like I might actually one day finish knitting this shawl. I cast this on in, was it March 2021? I've been knitting this shawl for a long time. But actually, now that I'm in the groove with it again, I've really enjoyed just sort of sitting, it's my TV knitting. So if I am sitting watching all of the shows, which I've been watching this month, I quite like just sitting and getting some knitting done, and that's, I think, where the progress is finally made. In contrast, my other shawl, I've done barely any on. I keep thinking that I really want to start knitting a cardigan for next year, uh, but I'm such a slow knitter and I don't put a lot of time into knitting. So, firstly, it takes me years and years and years to knit garments. And there's just no point starting something new whilst I've got two things that are unfinished. So I'm trying to be disciplined. This is a hand knit. I'm trying to wear my hand knits a bit more because I tend to knit a lot of stuff and then just chuck it in a drawer and never use it again. This is a sweater. Again, this took me like 3 years to knit. Um, and I guess I wanted to share this with you because on um, YouTube, particularly, there's a lot of knitting podcasts. Really experienced knitters or dedicated knitters is probably more the point. Dedicated knitters who produce garments that look pristine. They're all really well sized, they're all right proportions, you can't see any mistakes. Like this jumper, particularly, I started off, see, you can just see it's too big at the back, the sleeves are a bit baggy. There's so many areas in it. There's a whole section in the middle where I lost the track of the pattern. It's completely wrong. And the neck is too wide. But I don't care. I live in this jumper. It's absolutely perfect for just my day-to-day life. And I knit it at the end of the day. There is no other sweater that looks like this one in the entire world. Even the ones that's supposed to don't look like this. Um, so yeah, so I thought it would be useful just to share some flawed knitting with you, that it doesn't always have to be perfect. It just has to be yours and you can be proud of it. So you might see me wearing more of my scarves and shawls and stuff that I've made before, just as I said, because I'm trying to make an effort to actually wear them and not just knit them. I have also done, I'm nearly finished on my upcycled chest of drawers. I have decoupaged all of the fronts of the drawers now with old maps. This is a recommendation from a viewer in a previous video ages ago, and I really liked the idea, but it's taken me ages to get around to doing it. I am not one of these people that you see in other places on the internet that can just sort of, they start a project and then they finish the project and they sort of dedicate themselves to getting it done. I just drip feed things through until I either give up or they're finished. And everything takes ages. I don't have the staying power to just sort of do one thing at a time, or to do something quickly. I like to kind of have things that I can come back to. So that's why this chest of drawers should have only ever been a weekend project, and I think I started them in July or August. August, I think I started them. It is January tomorrow of a new year, and I'm still not finished with this chest of drawers, but I'm definitely making progress. I love the look of the maps on the drawers. I also used a map from the area near where I grew up, so like lots of familiar place names. So even though, because they're decoupage, they're also ripped up and stuck on and overlapping. Um, every now and again I see a spotter thing and I recognize it and I love it. So the next stage for this project is to get some handles, and then they will be done. And so maybe some lining paper in the drawer itself, and then they'll be done. I've still put the drawers back in the chest of drawers. I have still filled the drawers, even though I don't have any handles to open them and close them. But I don't know when it's going to be that I will get around to sorting out some handles for these things, so they may as well become useful. I think that's everything on my making. The only other thing really to share is that I've finally started moving furniture into this room. Um, and again, slowly but surely, moving all of the things that used to be in here from upstairs to downstairs and reloading the shelves. Although I'm trying to use these shelves to display some of my beautiful things a little bit more than just storage. So I'm trying not to overload them at all. Um, so that might be something that I'm ready to show you a finished version of next time round. But for now, what I'm hoping is it's giving a bit of soundproofing, so this video isn't quite as echoey as it could have been, has been previously. So yeah, I think that is everything I have to share you in the making. In the making. The final section for today's video is just adventuring and everything else that I've been up to. This is only really going to cover the first half of December, because with the Christmas holidays and time off and things like that, there's not a lot of variation across the month. And I've already shared with you my solo Christmas vlog, so you've sort of seen that bit. But at the beginning of the month, I went to London for the first time in ages. I actually went for my work's Christmas party, and it's the first time, because I was ill over the summer, it's the first time I've seen my colleagues in person since June. So that was really, really nice. But I got there a little bit early. I was worried about travel and being overtired and having like a full on time, and it was my first sort of big travel experience for a while. So I went a day early, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. So I didn't pre-book tickets, but I took myself to the theatre, was able to get a last minute seat at a production of Ballet Shoes at the National Theatre. Um, Again, I'll try and remember to put a link down below so that you can see it. It was just gorgeous. If you know the story of Ballet Shoes, it was one of my childhood favourite books, about the Fossil sisters who go to live in a house on the Cromwell Road in London, where they're after being collected by their eccentric adopted uncle. And they sort of have to, with their guardian and their nurse, have to find a way to navigate uh, living without any form of financial support at all. And they go into theatre school and they become dancers, and it's just a real beautiful fantasy story with a very happy ending. And it's been turned into a play. The play is a little bit more modern, so they've taken it. It's still set historically, but it's not in any specific period in history. Um, it's a little bit, if anything, it's sort of going to be more 30s, 40s than I think the original story was set, um, between the wars, so sort of 1920, 1950, somewhere between that time. Um, and there's some very funny bits. I didn't like everything that they did with it. I understand why they made some of the choices that they made for it to fit in the theatre and sort of fit modern audiences, but overall, the whole production was amazing. I'm a terrible crier. I cry at everything, and I cried my eyes out at most of the second half of the play. It was just like infusion of nostalgia plus the sort of the glory of the spectacle of the production. I had such a lovely time. It was a really great evening. And also I got myself there on the bus, got myself back on the bus, had a little walk down the South Bank in London, which was really nice. I missed the bookseller. London South Bank, under Waterloo Bridge, is famous for having a second-hand bookstall there, but the guy was packing everything up, and there were only a few books left when I walked past, so I wasn't able to have a rummage. Um, and yeah, it was just a really nice evening, and then a big full-on day in the office with my colleagues the next day. And everything else has just been Christmassy. I went to the pub quiz, came fourth with my team. I just joined a random group who needed an extra person, and we came fourth, which was really nice. I had Christmas, like a Friendsmas Christmas party. Neither of these things I thought to record because all of my recording tends to be, if you've been here for a while, you'll know, a little bit opportunistic. But they were really nice things that I did, and I feel like I've spent quite a lot of time with sort of friends and with people this month, which is a really nice and special feeling. Today is the last day of 2024, so it's New Year's Eve, and I will be spending the evening again with friends, having a quiet evening, dinner, play some games, that kind of thing around their house. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not going to spend, gosh, this video is already quite a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. So I'm not spending loads of time doing a full review of 2024 with you. It was a pretty horrible year, to be honest. Um, and I think that's universally true for a lot of people. It wasn't, some years are really good. 2024 was a bit meh. I'm hope that 2025 is better, but we'll see. I'm not somebody who does a lot of planning around that stuff. My Instagram, particularly, is just full of people planning for 2025 and setting goals and doing visualizations and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I'd just like to get through January. And then from February onwards, I might start thinking about um, what the rest of the year looks like. But January, I don't think is the right time to be having ambitions. It's a difficult month. It's very dark, very wet where I live. It's a long month. Um, but from February, we might start thinking about what does the rest of the year look like. So I shall leave that with you. Hopefully you've enjoyed my content in 2024. I'd really love it if you shared some comments or some highlights, any feedback or things that you would like to see me share with you. Um, Let me know what you're doing. What was your personal highlight of 2024? What are you looking forward to in 2025? How are you spending New Year? I hope you're all really, really well, and I look forward to catching up with you next time. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to do all of the things that YouTube likes, which is like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me to maintain my channel. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Ducks. All right.